Between 1946 and 1955, developers built millions of homes around a set of design standards chosen not for comfort, but to minimize cost. Cool white overhead lighting, acoustically open rooms, high contrast interiors with no spatial refuge. Decades later, neuroscience has confirmed what residents have quietly felt all along. These choices activate the same stress circuits your brain reserves for genuine threat. 6 specific features, found in most modern homes, are keeping your nervous system locked in a state it was never meant to sustain. And the explanation begins with a set of construction cost tables from 1946. In 1946, trade journals published cost tables that shaped the future of American housing. Builders faced a shortage of skilled labor and materials, so they turned to methods that promised rapid, economical construction. The Architect's Journal, in its January issue that year, compared the price of ceiling-mounted fluorescent tubes to traditional pendant lamps. The numbers were clear. Cool white fixtures could be mass-produced, shipped in bulk, and installed in a fraction of the time. A single electrician could finish an entire floor in a day, bypassing the ornate glasswork and wiring that once defined residential lighting. By standardizing on these fixtures, developers reduced both material waste and labor hours, an efficiency that persists in today's LED ceiling panels. Open-plan layouts followed the same logic. Internal memos from Levitt & Sons, the firm behind the first Levittown suburb, praised open-plan living for efficient supervision of household activities. Removing interior doors and non-load-bearing walls meant fewer timber cuts, less plastering, and fewer door frames to buy. The February 1946 Architect's Journal highlighted mechanical ventilators designed for no-door ventilation, a nod to the growing trend of acoustically open interiors. These choices were not about aesthetics or comfort. They were about maximizing usable space and minimizing cost per square foot. Marketing copy from the era promised maximum living space for minimum expense. Brochures showcased bright kitchens bathed in uniform white light, uninterrupted sightlines, and flexible spaces that could serve multiple functions. Behind the images, trade journal tables and developer memos reveal a system optimized for production, not for psychological ease. The result is that design features that would become standard, such as overhead lighting, open rooms, and high contrast finishes, were locked in by the arithmetic of post-war economics, not by any deliberate search for well-being. Cool white overhead lighting, once a symbol of modern efficiency, now saturates nearly every room of the contemporary home. The science behind its effect is clear. In 1995, a landmark laboratory study demonstrated that exposure to fluorescent light in the evening suppresses melatonin production, the hormone that signals darkness to the brain. This suppression begins within minutes. The mechanism runs through specialized cells in the eye called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, iPRGCs. When these cells detect short wavelength bluish light from ceiling fixtures, they send a direct signal to the brain's master clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. The result is a delay in melatonin release, keeping the body's stress system, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, primed for alertness long after sunset. Dr. Maya Patel, a chronobiologist at the University of California, Berkeley, explains that when a bedroom is bathed in cool white overhead light after sunset, iPRGCs send a false day signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, postponing melatonin release and keeping the HPA axis primed for stress. The consequences ripple through the night. Delayed melatonin means delayed sleep onset, higher evening cortisol, and a restless nervous system. Residents living under these fixtures report more frequent fatigue, trouble winding down, and a sense that true rest never arrives. Unlike the warm, shaded glow of pre-war table lamps, today's uniform ceiling light keeps the brain in a state of low-grade vigilance, even in spaces meant for recovery. The fixture that once promised convenience now quietly disrupts the body's hormonal rhythms, setting the stage for a restless night and a weary morning. In a typical open-plan home, sound travels without resistance. Voices, footsteps, the hum of appliances, all bounce from surface to surface, filling every corner. The effect is not just a matter of noise. Echoic interiors keep the brain's reticular activating system, or RAS, in a state of quiet vigilance. This ancient brainstem network evolved to scan for threats in unpredictable environments. In a reverberant room, the RAS cannot fully relax. Instead, it amplifies each unpredictable sound, feeding signals to the amygdala, the brain's central alarm system. Heart rate rises, parasympathetic tone drops, and the body slips into a subtle fight or flight stance that rarely fades. A 2026 functional MRI study placed participants in a controlled echo chamber. Researchers recorded a sustained increase in amygdala activity during simple navigation tasks. The subjects, all healthy adults, showed elevated sympathetic outflow and reported a persistent sense of unease, even though no actual threat was present. The lead author, Professor Alan R. Stein of the University of Leeds, put it plainly. Large reverberant spaces force the reticular activating system to stay on high alert, a condition originally described for survival, critical listening in the wild, but now repurposed for open-plan office lofts. In modern homes, the absence of acoustic barriers such as doors, thick curtains, and upholstered walls means the RAS rarely receives a signal to stand down. Over time, this low-grade alertness accumulates. Residents may notice fatigue, trouble concentrating, or a vague sense of restlessness that lingers long after the house grows quiet. The auditory dimension of home design, once overlooked, now stands out as a silent driver of chronic stress. As the story of sensory stressors unfolds, the next layer will shift from sound to the relentless demands of visual processing. Sharp boundaries between dark and light surfaces, monochrome kitchens, and bold accent walls may look striking, but they come at a neurological cost. In a landmark 2025 MDPY study, researchers tracked eye movements in high-contrast rooms and found that the rate of saccades, the rapid jumps your eyes make to scan the environment, nearly doubled compared to low-contrast settings. Each saccade demands a burst of metabolic energy from the brain's visual cortex, especially the V5MT region, which specializes in tracking motion and recalibrating focus. The study's authors describe this as an invisible tax on the brain's processing budget. Sustained, high-contrast exposure elevates cortical activity and drains neural resources, even in the absence of conscious strain. The effect is not limited to the eyes. As saccadic load increases, skin conductance rises, a marker of sympathetic nervous system activation. Participants reported a creeping sense of mental fatigue after just 20 minutes in these environments, even though the rooms were otherwise silent and still. The brain, forced to resolve sharp visual boundaries again and again, enters a state of low-grade alertness. Over time, this constant recalibration can produce a background hum of tension and overwhelm, especially in homes where black and white tile, glossy cabinetry, and saturated accent walls dominate the field of view. The metabolic drain is subtle but cumulative. Unlike a loud sound or a bright light, high visual contrast does not announce itself as a threat. Instead, it quietly accelerates the brain's energy use, leaving residents with a sense of depletion that no amount of rest seems to cure. The cost of a visually striking home is paid not just in aesthetics, but in the daily effort required to process its relentless boundaries. In the absence of alcoves, bay windows, or tucked-away corners, the modern home presents a geometry stripped of shelter. The concept of prospect and refuge, first described by ecological psychologists Rachel and Stephen Kaplan, explains why this matters. Humans instinctively seek spaces that offer a wide view for monitoring the environment, prospect, paired with a sense of enclosure, refuge, for safety. When both are present, the brain's ventromedial prefrontal cortex, VMPFC, remains active, regulating emotional responses and dampening the amygdala's alarm signals. Without these spatial cues, neuroimaging reveals a drop in VMPFC activity. The amygdala, left unchecked, continues to appraise the environment as potentially threatening, even when no danger exists. Anxiety lingers, and sleep becomes fragmented. A 2025 field study comparing residents of homes built before 1945 with those living in contemporary open-plan spaces found a sharp divergence in physiological markers. The open-plan group showed lower heart rate variability and higher baseline cortisol, both signs of chronic stress. Participants reported a persistent sense of exposure, as if nowhere in the house felt truly private or protected. Nina Torres, an associate professor of architecture at M1T, describes the effects simply. The removal of thresholds and niches reduces our innate sense of shelter. We are essentially designing perpetual vigilance chambers. The loss is not only emotional, but biological. The VMPFC's underactivation leaves the body's stress system running longer, shaping everything from immune function to mood. The geometry of the home, its lines, corners, and enclosures, becomes a silent regulator of anxiety. As thresholds and refuges disappear, the brain is left to scan, assess, and remain alert, unable to find the cues that once signaled safety. A continuous, unbroken interior may look modern, but it comes at a hidden neurological cost. Without doors, archways, or even subtle changes in flooring, the brain loses the spatial cues it relies on to segment experience. Cognitive scientists call this the doorway effect. In laboratory settings, walking through a doorway triggers a brief drop in working memory, as the hippocampus updates its map of the environment. In homes without thresholds, that reset never arrives. Instead, the brain must keep a vast, seamless space in mind at all times, forcing the parietal and frontal networks to maintain a running cognitive map. A 2024 field study used wearable skin conductance sensors to track physiological stress in residents of open-plan apartments. The results were consistent. Skin conductance, a marker of sympathetic nervous system activation, remained elevated by an average of 0.07 microsiemens throughout the day and night. Residents described a sense of low-level vigilance, as if they were always on alert for something just out of sight. This constant mapping load is not a conscious effort. It is a background demand, quietly draining mental resources and raising baseline arousal. In homes with clear thresholds, doors, alcoves, or even a change in ceiling height, the brain receives a cue to segment one zone from another. That segmentation allows working memory to offload irrelevant details, reducing cognitive burden. Without these boundaries, the mind is left to juggle a continuous stream of spatial information, which over time can manifest as fatigue, irritability, and a subtle but persistent anxiety. The seamless home, designed for flow and flexibility, instead becomes a landscape of unrelenting mental effort. After sunset, another sensory layer enters the home, one that slips past walls and lighting fixtures and goes straight into the eyes. Blue spectrum light from screens now saturates bedrooms and living rooms alike. The glow of a smartphone, tablet, or television delivers a potent signal to the brain's circadian machinery. Unlike overhead fixtures, these devices emit concentrated short wavelength light, peaking near 460 nanometers. The effect is not just visual. Specialized retinal cells tuned to this blue range send a direct message to the hypothalamus: stay alert, it's not yet night. A clinical trial published in 2021 tracked adults exposed to bright blue light from screens after 9 p.m. Salivary cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, rose 30% compared to those exposed to dim light. The same group showed a measurable spike in interleukin-6, a pro-inflammatory molecule linked to fatigue and mood disturbance. A 2024 study confirmed these findings, reporting that nightly screen use extended the cortisol awakening response and amplified interleukin-6 levels by 22%. These biochemical shifts are not minor. Elevated evening cortisol keeps the nervous system in a state of readiness, while rising interleukin-6 primes the body for inflammation, even in the absence of infection or injury. The result is a biochemical double hit: stress hormones and inflammatory signals, both triggered by the simple act of scrolling or streaming in bed. Residents often describe trouble falling asleep, waking unrested, or feeling inexplicably tense after a night with their devices. The technology that promises connection and relaxation instead delivers a surge of physiological stress, layering on top of the architectural triggers already present. In the modern home, the boundary between structure and screen collapses, and the nervous system is left to process it all. Industry documents rarely reach the public, but the logic is visible in the numbers. Standardized parts/manufacturing costs, overhead LED fixtures, modular cabinetry, and open floor plates all ship lighter and install faster than custom alternatives. A 2022 internal memo leaked from elephant.art details a clear directive: prioritize overhead lighting and open layouts to maintain economies of scale. The memo warns that custom amber-tuned fixtures raise product complexity and erode profit margins. Developers, facing tight margins and competitive markets, rely on these efficiencies to keep projects viable. Market research feeds the cycle. Surveys show that buyers rate open-concept interiors as 12% more valuable than equivalent compartmentalized homes. This perception translates into higher listing prices and faster sales, reinforcing the incentive to repeat the formula. The result is a feedback loop. Industry pushes features that optimize cost and perceived value, while media campaigns celebrate these same features as symbols of modern living. Catalogs from big box retailers showcase seamless rooms, cool white lighting, and minimalist furniture, all designed to photograph well and move product. Attempts to introduce health-focused alternatives, circadian-friendly lighting, acoustic zoning, or partitioned spaces often stall in the boardroom. The leaked memo cautions against feature creep that could complicate inventory or slow construction. Even as neuroscientific evidence mounts against the status quo, the combined weight of manufacturing, marketing, and resale economics keeps anxiety-inducing design features firmly in place. The system rewards repetition, not reform. A couple in their early 30s agreed to a simple retrofit. For 4 weeks, they swapped out every ceiling-mounted cool white LED for tunable, warm white fixtures, each set to dim automatically after sunset. The change was immediate in their biometric logs. Sleep latency, the time it took to fall asleep, dropped from 28 minutes to 18 minutes, a 35% reduction. Morning cortisol, measured by saliva, fell from 12.3 to 8.5 nanomoles per liter, a drop of 20%. Heart rate variability, a marker of the body's ability to recover from stress, climbed steadily, matching levels recorded in field studies of homes built before 1945. The couple described the effect as like exhaling after holding your breath for years. Across a larger field study, residents of older homes, those built before 1945 with their doors, alcoves, and layered lighting, showed higher heart rate variability and lower baseline cortisol than those living in contemporary open-plan spaces. In the older homes, the average sleep efficiency reached 88%, compared to 76% in modern layouts. Deep sleep, the kind that restores the brain and body, made up 22% of total sleep time in the older group, but only 15% in the open-plan cohort. These numbers suggest that even modest interventions, a warmer bulb, a single threshold, a quiet alcove, can recalibrate the body's stress system. The nervous system, shaped by millions of years of evolution, responds quickly to environmental cues. Change the cues, and the body finds its way back to rest. No sweeping remodel required. Every day, the walls around us shape how we think and feel. As new homes rise, design choices still favor efficiency over ease. Anxiety disorders now affect nearly 1 in 5 adults. The built environment is not neutral. It quietly rewires our sense of safety. The next blueprint isn't just about floor plans. It's about mental health. What will we choose to live with? Share your thoughts below.